Welcome to Inspiration Rising. My name is David Trotter. I'm a transformation coach dedicated to inspiring women and the men who support them to rise up in life, love, and leadership. Well, today we're talking all about integrity. Integrity is defined as the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, or the state of being whole and undivided. I don't hear a lot of people talking about integrity these days. Not to say that we don't have it. I just think possibly it's because if you talk about it, then you're more prone to have to live it, and people will actually call you out when you don't have it. Well, that's why I find it interesting that today's guest has called her organization, or social enterprise, as she calls it. They've named the organization Integris Women. Yes, that's the name, Integris Women. Stephanie Courtillier is the founder and CEO, and she's on a mission to inspire, educate, and empower women to create their own purpose-driven futures through a forward-thinking and compassionate community. Essentially, she's created a community of women here in Southern California, yet expanding around the United States, to support one another and grow their businesses with integrity. You are going to love my conversation with her. Now, before we jump into that interview, I want to read you an Amazon review of Empowered to Rise, my new book available at insporising.com/book. MJ, I wonder what that stands for. MJ. Matthew, John, Mary Jane, who knows? He or she or they write, I admit I'm a sucker for a beautiful cover, but I only keep reading if something speaks to me on a deeply emotional, spiritual level. This book is beautiful inside as well. I enjoyed the personal stories of the author and others and how they filled me with hope and encouragement. I'm going to be reading this book again with a highlighter in hand. That is an awesome review. The name of the book is Empowered to Rise, The Secret to Embracing Your True Identity, Uncovering Your Superpowers, and Bringing Your Inspiration to the World. And it currently has 17 five-star reviews, including MJ's. You can pick it up on Amazon via the link insporising.com/book. That's insporising.com/book. All right, let's jump into my conversation with Stephanie. Thanks so much for taking some time to hang with me today. I do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, David. Very excited to be here and connect with you.
I want to know all about this entity that you have started called Integris Women and what motivated you to start it.
Well, David, I'm sure like many others who are the entrepreneurial spirits, right? We start with the internal journey. So for me, it was the challenge. It was the struggle. It was being in burnout in my case, where I was working for a lot of startups and wore hundreds of different hats, which I loved and I thrived off of. However, from that struggle of really trying to be successful, it was this constant hamster wheel of killing myself with crazy hours, with just trying to do it all and living in overwhelm, that I broke. And through that break, it was very, I like to consider myself a very positive, inspiring human. And I wasn't living in that. It felt like this rain cloud was just sitting over my head for years. And I ended up getting out of it just by starting to ask myself these questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? And what is my legacy? And through powerful questions, we get the powerful solutions, right? It's only when we ask do we actually get to start seeking that new journey, that new path. And so Integris Women really came from that heart-centered place of I wanted more. I wanted to be more. I wanted to surround myself with humans who cared about other people, who took the time to look inward and live in a lifelong journey of development. And also through that process, take action and go out and live this legacy, not just talk about it, right? So it completely shifted my whole paradigm and the way that I lived and who I was. And today I consider myself just so blessed and grateful to have this community that actually holds me accountable to be a better human. And I love that. The 5 people we hang around with the most is who we end up becoming. So for me, it was, I wanted to create better humans that surrounded me. And in my case, these were women who I aspired to be like. And so it was very grassroots. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew exactly my why. I knew the vision And the how, which is where I used to get stuck. I'm a perfectionist. I love sitting in the how and solving problems. But in this case, I let that go, and it came to fruition all on its own.
That journey of being overwhelmed and having so much stress, tension, striving, whatever it might be, and then having a breakthrough experience or moment, that seems so common in our world, especially with the overworking or stress. Why do you think that is? Why do you think more and more people are having that experience?
I love this question because by no means have I achieved, if you will, right? I haven't made it, quote unquote. So I am still, by all means, I get stuck in my same patterns. I actually just picked up this book. It's kind of, this universal moment. I've had this book called The Intuitive Way for like 8-something years.
Okay.
And I had read a part of it before. And I think I was ready to finally receive that message. This is literally just this week. And they talk about the be, do, have cycle. Mm-hmm. And all of us know that saying, be, do, have. And, my mom, in my case, is a spiritual life coach. And of course, she's my mom. So the messaging is kind of like, okay, yeah, mom, that sounds great. But I never actually took it to heart.
Can you elaborate on that just for somebody who maybe isn't aware of the kind of be, do, have kind of cycle? Help people understand that.
I believe our society is stuck in do and have, meaning we live in a society that our happiness is based on what we have, on our accomplishments, on our career, on our titles. We're stuck to that. You're interviewing me right now in a time of this COVID, of uncertainty, and people are losing those titles left and right. People are losing what they used to associate with who they are, that meaning for themselves. And myself included, am completely stuck in do have. I base my worthiness on my accomplishments. And I think that is something that so many other women and men have got sucked into. So the concept, the high level of be, do, have is almost just the way that we are, the way that we live our lives. And my kind of epiphany, even like I said, just this week, and I catch myself in the same spiraling cycle. It's almost different because with Integris Women, it's instead of a job, we'll say, I am passionate. I live and breathe. This is my soul work. So it's almost, it becomes an addiction, right? It's a very fine line between your passions and your addictions. And so for me, the do have cycle is to break that. We have to sit and be. And it's so counterintuitive, especially for me, who once again, my worthiness is based on my production. But in order for me to actually get the inspiration and get the motivation and the energy in that, when we're in flow and things are, anything around me could just dissipate, but I'm so in the moment with that heartfelt work. I have to, the counterintuitive piece is I have to let it go. I have to let go of producing to allow myself to do things I love, to sit outside in nature, to breathe. I talk really fast when I get really excited. And I've been public speaking a lot more, and everyone tells me, slow down. So even just listening to that message. And when I slow down, when I recenter myself, when I'm in B, I can naturally then go into do. And I don't feel like I have to push. Anytime that you're stressed, anytime that you're overwhelmed, anytime that you're facing challenges and things aren't going my way, or I just feel so out of the loop, I'm so disconnected. That's when we're stuck in do have. And we need to remind ourselves and create those, positive triggers or positive reminders. This is a time I need to let that go. I need to go back to finding myself. And everyone can do that in a different way. And to sit in the be, because through the be, that's when we're best connected to source, when we're best connected to our hearts, when we're connected to even our family members, and we can enjoy the present moment. And then out of nowhere, out of the blue, it's all, I don't believe it's just coincidence. I believe it's meant in that way. But from there, we will get that tap on the shoulder of, here's this really cool idea. Or here's that solution to that challenge that you've literally been pushing yourself for a week and a half to figure out. And it just flows. And then it's seamless. And so be, do, have literally reading that chapter in this book of this breaking the do, have cycle, I think is so important right now.
Yeah. Especially now that we're all working from home, it's like home becomes work, work becomes home. They become enmeshed. And I know I work from home regularly, and it sounds like you probably do too prior to this.
Yes.
But and so it can be challenging for us on a regular basis. It's like, where does work start and stop and end? And, because if you love it, you don't want to stop doing it.
Right.
But that's so challenging. Wow. Okay. So taking time to just be. Yeah. So Integris Women, why did you call it Integris Women? Obviously, the root word there is integrity, but why was that so important as opposed to, you could have called it Be Women, you could have called it Wise Women, you could have called it all kinds of, you know what I mean?
I don't think I was at all in the be or wise space, even when I started it. So this is a whole new path for me, David. Really, it came from my core values. When I asked those first three questions, who am I? Where do I belong? What is my legacy? And there were so many other questions I asked. It came kind of from a space of that first one, who am I at the core? What do I want to be standing for? What really matters to me right now? What does love look like? What does fulfillment feel like? And so coming from a place of my values, this was a big shift for me too, is instead of just goal setting to goal set, I now goal set around my values. And so integrity was a key component to how I wanted not only to be, but how I wanted to do business. And I wanted to align myself with other partners, clients, collaborators, sponsors, all of it, my whole ecosystem of business. I wanted to do business with people who are in alignment with those same values. And I felt that integrity, unfortunately, right now is not something we see a lot in business. Now, in my case with Integris Women, I started it as a social enterprise, which means that there's a huge give component to all the business I do. So living with integrity is essential to the way that I do business, because I need to be, or at least I choose to be transparent in where the funding goes. I choose to be transparent in communicating the impact. So for me, Integris Women, and it's so I appreciate that it comes from integrity, because the word Integris doesn't exist, but it's been just, I kind of joke that when you do business with me, I held myself accountable automatically just by naming myself Integris Women, right?
Yeah.
So it does create this very strong, I would even say, identity for our members in our community. That and it's not to make it, another stress or a burden of who we need to be and expect ourselves. I don't like the word expectation. Instead, I like the word commitment. And so this commitment to aspire to be someone who lives of integrity, right? That just sits so deeply within my soul. And I've found that in our community, it's the same for all these other women.
What does that mean
to live this?
What does that mean to you to live with integrity?
Ooh, that's a deep question, because there's so many elements to it. For me, integrity is, at the very basic, I do what I say, right? There's alignment between the words that I'm speaking and the actions that I'm taking. And I'm not a perfect human. I haven't, once again, made it or achieved it all, or, I may be 2 steps ahead of a couple of the women that I get to serve, and I get to learn and, fail miserably in front of them and with them. So with integrity, to me, it's living that authentic life. It's being open about when things aren't going well. That was a new one for me. I used to love you. And I think, unfortunately, that's how our society raises our young girls. Be pretty, sit down, be quiet, don't cause chaos, don't be loud, right? Or else you're bossy, or else it turns in, these, what could be these strengths are automatically flipped into weaknesses. And so the integrity piece is so important. And for me, it really means as simply as, when I say something, I'm going to do it. And that needs to show up on all elements of my life, not just my business. If I tell my husband I'm going to stop working at 6 p.m., but I'm working till 7, 8 p.m., I'm not living with integrity.
Yeah.
And when we break those promises to ourselves, that means it's showing up in so many other places in our life. And so for me, it serves once again as a reminder to myself that I've committed to this. And what better way than to stick it in my name of my business, so I hear it all the time. And I can kind of check myself when I'm not in integrity. And it's okay to not be on all the time, to not be perfect all of the time, and to have grace with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. I don't hear that word integrous or integrity used very much at all in our culture outside of, part of my background in terms of faith is as a Christian. And in that, although my beliefs have shifted, quite a bit over the last decade, that is a strong word in that community. That's a really strong concept, a really strong value that's really positive, to have integrity. One of the challenges that I've seen, though, is when that value is lifted up, that some people can then go into hiding when they feel like their life is not aligning in some way with their words. So then it can become a place of, I'm not saying anything bad about integrity. It's wonderful. This is amazing. But how do you personally deal with, like, oh my gosh, I am working till 8, and yet I'm presenting this view that I'm working till 6, or I did kind of shade it on that. I was kind of promoting a little too much rather than what it was. Really, there's only 10 people involved in this thing, not 100, or something. You know what I mean? Whatever the thing is. How do you deal with that for yourself and others?
It was for me specifically, and I can't speak to other stories, but what I've noticed for myself, and I aligned it with the identity of my perfection, of having to be this perfect, I have it all, I'm doing it all on the outside. And on the inside, it was just broken. It was overwhelmed. That was the chaos. So integrity is a choice. And as I said in the beginning, we're humans. It's okay to fail. And not even fail, but it's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
And I think this is a self-identity kind of journey also, but it's that awakening piece within our society right now where my biggest learning lesson, I work a lot in mental health, and it was fascinating for me because it was so easy for me to be that safe person for people to come and share their struggles with.
Right.
But in even my closest of personal relationships, I was never someone who self-disclosed my struggles because I had to seem perfect, because I had to have it all together. I joke, I was like this positive boot camp officer going around going, it's okay, I'm going to whip you into positive shape, and literally making these bad emotions or these failures or these learning lessons as a bad thing. If I feel angry, I'm a bad person. Or if I'm feeling sad right now or feeling guilty, that's a bad emotion. I need to tuck that away and be positive. And that was the cycle that I was in. And it broke, for me, I've had just so many life situations, let's say, but one in particular, it broke me, and it literally forced me into a space where I had to get out of that. I had to say, look, this is what I'm going through. And I'm not in a healthy mindset right now. I'm in a very, I'm going through grief in my case. And through this grief, it ripped my heart open. But through that process, I learned the importance of sitting in the hard and making it okay to be in hard spaces. And that is so powerful, not only personally, but for business, because I will fail in my business. I'm going to leap off an edge with no idea where there may not be a safety net. And when I fail, not if, but when I fail, I will have learned to sit in that hard place and have learned to still bring voice to my journey and say, look, guys, do you see that ledge? I jumped. I completely messed up. Don't do what I did, right? Like, that's the beauty of running, in my case, a community, is people ask me questions all the time, and I get to share. If I only share the successes, right. And I had a great conversation with one of my members, actually. She said, I put you on a pedestal. And when I put you on a pedestal, I can't connect with you in a deep way. Yeah. But when you come, not even down from the pedestal, but when you make yourself real, and you tell me, hey, me too, I have those hard thoughts. Right. Me too, I have been through that struggle. Me too, I've sat there in depression and no idea where to get out. But this is the one step I took. When we can level with people in that way, then we create that. That's where we get connection in Integris Women. That's one of our foundations, is authentic connection. Yeah. You can only do that when you're in a space of being with people.
I've heard it described that your integrity is when your insides match your outsides. Meaning
Yes.
that, like you just said, that you're not trying to be something other than who you are. And that doesn't mean that we're walking around as one constant Facebook rant or open wound, but that whatever we're going through on the inside is matching the inside or matching the outside. And if we said something on the outside, that our internal world is going to match that. And how do we align those things? That's really beautiful. I know that you call Integris Women a social enterprise. What is that? That's kind of new language for probably some of our listeners.
So I caught myself in one of my events accidentally actually describing it this way, and it kind of caught fire in my community. So I'm going to use the same very raw definition. Social enterprise is, if you imagine a mom and a dad, and the mom is a nonprofit and the dad is a for-profit. And I laugh because this is so my mom and dad. My mom's like a giver. My dad's like business, right? So you've got these parents, and when they get together and they have a baby, it's this blended version, this blended model. So I'm totally the social enterprise model where I've got the ambition where I want to create revenue and create sustainable profits to fund a business, right? So there's a for-profit component to Integris Women, which is we're a membership community. We host events that, we charge for. We have sponsorships. We do impact retreats. We do a whole multitude of things to create revenue because, yes, this is a business, and I'm not ashamed to say it's a business because we need funding in order to sustain the impact piece of our business. So in my case, the impact piece is work we do in Guatemala around mental health. It's sponsorships we provide to local underserved women because they also deserve to get connected with a different set of 5 women, right? Just like when I first started. It's the community component of what we've built with our ecosystem of nonprofits and social enterprises here in Orange County, and also now really expanding into different states. So it's this very intricate blended model. You can Google social enterprise, as I did a million times when I was starting. And there's so many different definitions. That's what's kind of fun for entrepreneurs right now is it's not black and white. It's literally the gray space between these two worlds. But I believe I'm a big advocate that this is the wave of business for the future because there's more accountability to businesses to show their impact. It's, I'm a millennial. I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm the good millennial, not that there's a bad version, but we're passionate. We want to have impact. We want to know that when I give you $1, that dollar is going to not just serve you, but serve someone else, right? Get creative with the way we do business. So social enterprise is the wave of the future. Nonprofits aren't as sustainable. The funding dollars are different. Fundraising is different. I work in nonprofit. I know this. For-profits are unfortunately seen, many of them are doing really great work, but many of them are seen as greedy, or the only thing they care about is their stakeholders.
Right.
They don't think about their clients. They don't think about the littering that they're doing through their business, right? So how do you find a happy mix? And really for me, social enterprise is that pathway.
I know there are 3 pillars that you really focus on that are part of that social enterprise. Can you break that down for us? And specifically the give back component, how you chose where you give back, how that happens, and so forth.
The 3 pillars for Integris Women are the 3 Ps. Kept it real simple. Personal power. So it starts with ourselves. Really, if you look at be, do, have, it kind of flows that in that same method. So personal power. Second one is professional development. And the third is philanthropy. Now, I broke it down like this because when I got out of that same struggle for myself, I looked at my life and I found there were 3 common themes of places, right? So I can bucket in family, friends, and all that in my personal life, professionals, my career, my finances, my work. And then in my philanthropy, that's the fun, that's the give, that's the being of service, a servant leader. And so through those 3 pillars, we've built content, events, connections, everything we do flows within those 3. And by living through those 3 and consistently being even conscious of those 3 themes in our lives, that to me is how we stay with integrity, how we live that Integris leader or become that Integris leader in our communities for the work and the impact that we're looking to create.
Okay. So you chose, as part of that philanthropy work in Guatemala, how did you choose that work? What does that look like? How does that play out?
If you asked me when I first started Integris Women, I'd be doing anything in Guatemala. I'd be like, I don't even know anyone who lives there. Guatemala was so off of my radar. It's had nothing to do with, I think, where my head was at. I'm French, I'm Middle Eastern. If anything, I would have started there. But living, I think it was very much, and this is what I always tell our members, is don't get stuck in the how. And I will get to the point of getting to Guatemala, but I was so crystal clear on my why. Great, I've got 3 Ps. I know what this will look like for myself. I know why it's important to me. I know that my heart is in this work. I know I'm doing it for the right reasons, and it's not just for show. The vision was to create a community, to be this Integris leader. So I knew the why, I knew the vision, and the how was a total blur. I just started going out and talking about this stuff, right? Speak as if it already exists, and it shall. So I just went out and started talking. And people resonated with the message. I was like, awesome, great. Now there's 2 of us. Now there's 7 of us. Now there's 15. What are we doing? I don't know, but we're doing something, and it's working. And so Guatemala came along in the beginning stages of when I was just kind of talking and saying, hey, this is my vision for what I want to be as an Integris leader. Do you resonate? And ironically, it was in a job interview for a nonprofit because I wanted to get the nonprofit experience. I never worked in nonprofit. I was always for-profit. And the HR director goes, you need to meet my niece. You are just like her. And her niece's title was something like, oh God, it was like a happiness coach, I think, at the time. And I was like, That sounds amazing. Obviously, I want to be happy. I would love to meet your niece. So long story short, I get coffee with this woman I had never met. And if you get, if you live in Orange County, I'd love to get coffee with you because I'm unfortunately, we could do virtual coffee. But I digress. I get to sit down with this beautiful woman, and it's an hour coffee meeting, just like any other business meeting I have. And I sit there for 3 hours.
Wow.
And 3 hours later, because she's sharing stories of these young girls in Guatemala. And this ended up being the connection. And in my case, just sitting and hearing these stories, it was a pivotal moment for me. Because like many of us, I volunteer. I do good. I've traveled around, I've been blessed to travel to different countries and do good there. But for whatever reason, I walked away from that meeting and going, someone needs to do something about this. And it was stories of, in this case, young teen moms who were being abused, who at 12 years old were having children out of abusive relationships. And it was just this horrific scene in my mind. And I'm like, I couldn't even fathom that in the 21st century, this is still happening.
Right.
But that moment of asking the question, someone needs to do something about this. And I know many of us have had that moment in our lives, but not many of us do something about it, right? We kind of look to our left and look to our right. Well, someone else will take care of that.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, it was sitting and going, oh my God, I have this ideal for Integris Women. I knew I wanted to partner with a nonprofit or do something. I would give. No idea how. I didn't know about social enterprise at the time. So that was the start of that relationship. So Guatemala became this co-partner where we got to build and co-create what became a very key part of our impact model. So once again, the how, everyone, will appear. We get so stuck in, I need to know exactly the step 1, step 2, step 3. But meeting it, her name's Kim Latona, sitting down with Kim for coffee all these years ago now, we laugh at that moment because it was just so powerful and such a pivotal moment for both of us to have built that relationship in that literally unknowing of what was going to happen. So Guatemala, to get to that point was built through that first coffee. And now we've built, it was a 3-year program that we put together around mental health and empowerment. And so we made it sustainable by creating things like a health needs analysis. So now we actually travel twice a year to Guatemala. We have monthly meetings with them. One of those actual trips, I bring a group of my community with me. So we call it our impact trip. And it's always different, meaning we always do the best to use the skill sets, the strengths, and the passions of the women that come with us to co-create that space. So it always looks different. But at the heart of it, it's how do we best serve, but also where can we learn from this community? We're not the white knights coming in to save the day. We go in and we ask questions and we remind them that they already have the solutions. A lot of times that's just what people need.
So powerful. Wow. Now, you've just described, my next question is really about the uniqueness of Integris Women. And you've just described that in terms of the give component. Outside of the give component, all right, we know that that's what makes Integris Women very unique as a social enterprise. What also makes Integris Women unique in terms of what you do versus perhaps other networking groups that gather together?
And it's funny because when people come to our events, they think they're coming to a networking event. And I know obviously it's different. And now we get to do this virtually, which is actually more exciting. But they think they're showing up to networking. So we always have this moment at the very end of our events where we do this huge round table and everyone gets to speak and have a voice. And it's always the resounding, I didn't want to come. Right. I kind of forced myself to come because I knew I have this new business, or my boss told me I have to be here. And it's kind of this raw moment where we get to be like, I was tired today. I didn't want to have to come to a night networking event.
Yeah.
And it ends up being so much more because it's not a networking event. It's almost like showing up in a room full of who's going to become your best friends. And you don't know who that person is yet, but through the night you get to have these very deep conversations. And I think that's what really, I know based on what I did death by survey for a long time. I'm a marketer. So I was like, what is it? What's our magic sauce? And I was like begging my community to tell me. And it was kind of like always right in front of my face, right? It's like, well, it's just who we are. It's when you get to sit across a person and I know this because I love networking. So I go to so many networking events, and it's rare to meet those unique, beautiful humans who are as excited to hear about you as they are to talk about themselves. Right. Yeah. So to sit in a room full of women who are, to society standards successful and also very humble and are literally in a space where they want to know about you, but they don't ask you, what do you do? They ask you, what do you like to do?
Yeah.
They ask you, who are you? Right. Like, what do you do on the weekends? What's fun for you? How do I support? How do I serve you? Oh my gosh, walk into a room like that, you never want to leave.
Right. So powerful. So powerful. I always ask people, how do you spend your time? That's a radically different question. It's just
I need to write that down.
Do you mean work? Sure. But do you mean like with my partner? Yeah, sure. So
I'm writing this down, David. I love questions. Good questions. That's all you need in groups anyways. Show up with a different, unique question. Oh my gosh, you stand out so much compared to, oh, why are you here? What do you do? There's always the two common questions in networking events. But if you learn to ask more powerful questions, you will build deeper relationships.
Yes. We were, my wife and I were at a Christmas party a number of years ago. Beautiful waterfront, oceanfront, home. Everybody's kind of jam-packed. There's music, there's people. And there's a politician there that is very well known. And he was walking around passing out his business card. Not asking you, just literally, here's a and and I thought, this is the poor guy. This is the embodiment of what most people envision a networking event to be. It's just walking around somehow pushing your agenda on other people.
Oh my gosh!
It was so funny. He had already given us one, and then he went to give us another one, and he didn't even realize. And my wife's like, "Yeah, I've already got one. Thanks so much."
Oh wow!
Yeah, so funny. Such a challenge. Politicians have it tough because they're constantly meeting all these new people. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. All right. So if somebody wants to start something like this in their area, maybe obviously you're in Orange County, California. They can join virtually your sessions right now, which is so great. But let's just say that after the coronavirus, or maybe they just want to connect with women in their geographical area, what advice would you have for them in terms of how to begin something like that?
So the question, actually, I'm going to restate it just to make it clear. So it's how do I build community around my values, or how do I build, in our case, a movement around a vision that is very clear of who we want to be. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think it starts first, you got to define for yourself who you are. You have to really sit and go through. In my case, I try to push this perfectionist piece, but it just shows up everywhere. Right. So I didn't take one personality test. I took 20, right. And I mapped it all out. I'm like, this is who I am. And I never actually sat and it took me a while to finally sit and ask myself and listen to myself. But I was really looking for that outside, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So I'm aware of them and I know where to leverage. But to build that community for me, the best advice I can do is get to know yourself first. Be really clear on your why, discover your purpose, go out, try different things. I didn't get this off the first bat. I tried, with my husband, we were actually making French pastries. And I was like, how do I create a social enterprise or, an impact around French pastries? I love senior citizens. And I just started mapping out, right? Like, here's my strengths. Mm-hmm. Where's my passion lie? What's a business model that can get me towards the impact that I want to have? So it was kind of like this Venn diagram, if you will, of my strengths, different businesses, and the impact. But what mattered most to me was my strengths and the impact. Mm-hmm. And then it was just, what is that method, that framework, that process that's going to get me to get the impact and leverage my strengths? And in my case, I'm a natural connector. It came easy. It's not hard for me to get a group of 15 women to sit in a circle and have a conversation. Yeah. But if you're an introvert, don't go use this process. This is not your process, right? You might be awesome at copywriting, or you might be a killer at social media. I am horrible at social media. I barely update my own personal social media feed. So don't go ask me to go be this, huge influencer online. Maybe I will if I find the right people. But to build that community around you, first identify your strengths. Look at what is it you want to not even accomplish, but who do you want to be in this world, mm-hmm. right? What's the niche, or what's the passion points? Do you love to sew? Build a community around sewing, right? Actually, some of the best and most thriving communities are the ones that are in these most niche groups that you would never anticipate. Right. Sewing, gardening, they have the most loyal people because they're so passionate. And trust me, your life is going to change really drastically and fast when you start surrounding yourself with people and you start having different conversations than the ones you're currently having. So sit and think about this stuff. This is what the 1% do. This is not what the 99% do. The 99% do are sleepwalking. The 1% are awake, highly aware of who they are, always learning, always growing, asking for feedback, doing these types of things, and then surrounding themselves by people who will hold them accountable to be that best version of themselves.
Stephanie, so good. IntegrisWomen.com, INTEGROUS women.com. We'll obviously have that in the show notes. People can swipe up on their phone and click the link there and learn more about what you're doing and follow you on social media.
I'm good at LinkedIn. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, that's probably where I'm most active. But yes,
we will definitely connect people there. So Stephanie, thanks for sharing your journey and your wisdom and your value for integrity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you for having me.
If you were inspired by my conversation with Stephanie today, I want to invite you to take a moment and share it with a friend. Screenshot your phone, text them the image, and tell them to subscribe to Inspiration Rising on their favorite podcast app. And also, don't forget to pick up my new book, Empowered to Rise, at insporising.com/book. It's a quick read, and people are saying that it's truly making a difference in their lives. As you go about your day, I want to encourage you to think about that word integrity and reflect on its meaning in your life. Are you a person of integrity? How can you seek to cultivate that value in your life in the way that you have relationships with your family and friends and coworkers? And what does integrity look like in your life on a day-to-day basis?